about vineyard removals, we're seeing shifts in consumer demand, and all industries are feeling labor availability and the cost of doing business challenges. And I think a lot of us, whether you're directly involved in the wine industry or not, are asking the same question. What does this actually mean to Sonoma County? So today is about getting clarity. We're going to have some amazing industry experts here to kind of answer all of those questions that we have. But before we get started with our program, we're going to go ahead and do some special announcements. Big thank you to Don Mills of Sound Ideas. He's not with us, but he's at Alejandro. And also a big thank you to our sustaining members. Those are all their logos up there. Thank you. You make this program, you make our organization possible. So thank you to all of you folks. And thank you to all of you guys. Really, we're about a membership. We're about networking. We're about supporting each other in our business. And so thank you for all being here because we have a very exciting program for you today. So with that, I'm going to introduce our amazing Executive Director, Ty Moody, and she's got some announcements.
Welcome, guys. We have so much wine and beer here to hand out for our guests, so it's a good time to be here today. You know, we've all seen the headlines. Tony talked about that a bit. And I know Robert Eiler was here last January, and he touched on this topic quite a bit. And he forecasted some more headlines very similar to what we just saw, the closing of vineyards, the shortage with the labor, the slump in the market, and as the Alliance always does, we have call to action. So today's pretty easy. I'm sure we all know what it is. We need to drink more local wine. So make sure today, on your way out, go get a bottle from the store, bring it home. Enjoy these with friends. If you're a guest here and you win one, enjoy it with friends and make sure that we're continuing to support this industry that's so critical to our identity. Today we do have a pretty stellar panel. I think if you were going to visualize who would be at the table for this conversation, we have nailed it on the head. So I appreciate you guys being here today, and thank you to Nick Fryer, board member, who set this all up and helped make sure we had the right people in the room for the conversation. We're really excited to welcome this panel. And if you are a guest today, because I checked in a lot of guests, I want to encourage you to enjoy today's program and then join the team. This program and the programs that we bring monthly, it happens because of our memberships. That's why we're able to do this. We are a member-based organization. So if you like what we're doing here and you want to participate, we hope you join and that you add your voice to the table as well. Also, because we have a new benefit rolling out. So one of the things that we identified as a missing piece is what we're calling the civic brief. So we are a county-wide organization. We are monitoring what's happening all through Sonoma County. It's what sets us apart. We are keeping on the pulse. And so this will be a one-stop shop for our members only, where you could scroll through a quick one-pager and see what happened at each of the chambers. You're going to see Board of Soups, you're going to see all of city councils, and you're going to be able to say, okay, so this is the actions that were taken, and then you'll get a little note on why it matters, which is the key, because we want to make sure that we're connecting the dots for you, so you're not just getting a list of what happened, but you're seeing why you should be paying attention to it. There will also be links so you can see the minutes for that meeting, or you're able to check out some of the additional information, like what the new 1033 policy is going to look like. So stay in the loop on that. I think the first one's going to roll out on Friday, so check your inboxes. And then while you're on your computer, make sure you add our upcoming events. So we have on May 7th, we're going to bring in John Stout from the airport. I know they have their inaugural flight, I think April 7th. So fueling our economy, we're going to talk a little bit about how that's going to impact Sonoma County, having that great new airline, and other exciting updates from the airport. And then another really exciting thing, we finally nailed down a date and a location. Our Bocce for Books that used to be at Taft, thank you, Mike, for all of the donations you did for that event. Quick round of applause for Mike at Taft. Serious supporter of this, and we are so grateful. We're excited to give it a refresher. We're calling it Rally for Reading. It's gonna be pickleball for paperbacks, guys. So we're gonna ride on the wave of pickleball here. We're gonna go, I know we have our member here from Centerline 33. We are going to be at Centerline 33, which is it was Pickle Town in Roanoke Park. It is a beautiful facility with a ton of indoor courts, and we're really excited to see what you guys have on you for pickleball. So stay tuned. That's going to be August 1st. We will be looking for donations. We will be looking for teams. So stay abreast of that. All right. To self-introductions, guys. We have a lot of wine and beer at my feet here. So if you are a guest, make sure you give a business card because we are going to hand these out. All right, so as I walk around, we're going to stand up, name, business, pass the mic. I'm going to go over here to David.
Good morning, David Urbilli with Sonoma County Farm Bureau.
Hey everybody, Tanya Tisconi Event Management Solutions, and I have a guest, Scott Newman, who's over there.
Morning, I'm Ken LaFranchi, architect and a grape grower, and I have a list of guests here today. So, Mike Martini, who was just introduced, he's with Tap Street Winery, and he's the former executive director here. John Boletto of Boletto Vineyards and Boletto Winery. Cam Mortson of Mortson Farms, and Steve Dutton of Dutton Ranches. And then Sean Sundberg is with John Deere. We're not rattling off the John Deere tractor, but it would be awfully nice.
I didn't know if Nick was going to introduce me, Ken, or I'll just introduce myself. So I'm your speaker, Carissa Cruz with the Sonoma County Wine Growers.
Andrew Smith, the Agricultural Commissioner and Seal Weights and Measures for Sonoma County.
Jeanette McClure, American Ag Credit.
Nick Fry, Boletto Vineyards. My guest is Mark Couchman with Vintage Supply Partners.
Judy Groveman Walker with JGW Events and Travel.
Good morning, everybody. So nice to see all of you. I am Lanny Medina, and I am with Bering Global Education Foundation, and I am very excited to introduce my guest, David Bering, who is a philanthropist, was a former partial owner of the Seattle Seahawks and Black Hawk Museum, and the Wheelchair Foundation, which has given out 1.2 million wheelchairs to people in poverty in 156 countries. Thank you for listening.
Sherry Granzato from Wine Country Radio and Digital. Melissa Galliani, Wine Country Radio and Digital. And we have a guest here, Jim Landa from Landa Family Vineyards.
Good morning, Melanie Dodson, CEO of 4C Sonoma County, Everything Child Care. I have a guest this morning, Eric Flanagan with Flanagan Wines.
Dee Swanheiser from Taking Action for Living Systems.
I'm Elaine Fopiano. I'm actually Roy Martinez's guest, but he left me standing at the altar today, so I have to introduce myself. I'm with First Choice Business Brokers. I'm also a great broker.
Good morning, Diva Marie Proto, County Clerk, Recorder, Assessor, and I have two guests from my office. I have Julie DeVita, our Chief Appraiser, and Sarah Reed, our Supervising Appraiser in charge of Ag.
Sanford Bresick, Eagle Strategies.
We'll walk around this way. We're going to take an odd route.
Good morning, Steve Bertelbaugh with Friends of Smart.
Hi, Claudia Sisonflu with Sonoma Clean Power.
Tony Spisman, 707 Promotions.
I'm Annie with Argonaut, and I have my co-workers, Christina and Trevor with Argonaut, and my guest, Angie McDaniel with Hydro.
Good morning, Lori Rodriguez, CPA with Dillwood, Berkel, and Millar, CPAs and Business Advisors.
Emily Virgil with New York Life.
Dan Rosati with the Round Barn Group at Morgan Stanley.
Rob Sandville, KLH Consulting.
Chuck Root, Double Eagle Financial, where cash is still king.
Good morning, Jack Byrne, Navigate Inc.
Danny Sheehan with Friends of Smart.
Kevin C., CPA.
John Cregan, Santa Rosa Chief Police.
Good morning, everyone. Terry Sanders, Santa Rosa Planning Commission and candidate for Santa Rosa City Council District 4.
Tom Schwed, I'm TZS Consulting and candidate for Supervisor District 4.
Linda Bone, Training and Development, State Bank.
Scott Kincaid, Facility Development Company.
Howard Dalton, I do a few things.
Jamie Woods, PCD, KB Integrated.
Tracy Shepard with Live Oak Bank.
Rick Carlisle, BKF Engineering.
Kurt Nichols, retired past president.
Josh Goff, BMO Commercial Bank.
Lisa Whitney Schaffner, North Coast Builders Exchange.
Ramsey Brown with Exchange Bank.
Claudia Vecchio, Sonoma County Tourism.
Jeff Rowland, B&R Glass.
John Rudolph from PCD, and my guest Hal Truax from PCD as well.
Kathy Bianello with Rollo Agrifinan.
Good morning, Ryan Bucksbaum, Next One Staffing.
Good morning, Mike Lopez, partner at Liberty Company, Business Insurance.
Andre Moran, for LJ Grace Consulting Engineers, and board member United Way of the Wine Country.
Pierre Rete, Sonoma County, Ag and Open Space.
Pete Lescure, Lescure Engineers, and Mark West, Chamber of Commerce Director.
Kelly Bass-Seibel, Sonoma County Tourism.
Good morning, David Brown, Adobe Associates, Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors.
Sean Jean, Relgian Race Consulting Engineering.
Good morning, Mark Soto. Soil and Materials. Come see us at the new Yard and Garden Center a couple miles from here.
Good morning, Nick Dexter, the Duke Dexter Plumbing and Super Service Plumbing. And with me today, my guest is Luis Miranda of Miranda Vineyard Management.
Good morning, Artie Dexter, Leduc Dexter and Super Service Plumbing, and I have a guest today, Jim Pratt from Cornerstone Vineyards.
Brian Lane, real estate broker, appraiser, and SCA treasurer.
Good morning, Mick Menendez, Pacific Advisors, Education Chair, and again, just reminding everybody about August 1st. It's going to be a great event. We're looking for some help with auction items, etc. So please be there. Thank you.
Paul Jonas, Exchange Bank, past president.
Good morning, Dick Dow, retired past president.
Sarah Butaro, owner of Sonoma Coastal Living Real Estate Services and Bodega Bay and Beyond Vacation Home Rentals, where we manage 90 homes along the coast.
Good morning, Megan Rhodes from Santa Rosa Junior College.
Good morning, Lori Mooney, Northgate Biz Magazine.
Good morning, Damien Reddy, your pickleball host at Centerline 33.
Good morning, Haley Blythe, Boys and Girls Club, Sonoma Marin.
Good morning, Janet Connors, Summit State Bank and past president.
Marlene Soyland, Soyland Management.
Mark Nelson, Mid-State Construction.
Kathy Goodacre, Consultant, Advisor, and Coach, and Alliance Board Member.
Kim O'Day, Fidelity National Title.
Good morning, Ernest Berghoff, broker and CEO at Berghoff Realty and Alliance board member.
Good morning, Jason Lee, Superintendent Roseland School District, board member, also a Cabal fan, so please, we need silent auction items, and it's going to be a great time. So if you haven't played pickleball yet, You have time to learn by August 1st and have a great day. And I have a guest with me today, Craig Colagrassi, owner and operator of Colagrassi Wines.
Good morning, Gary Lentz, mortgage banker at New American Funding.
Madeline Keegan-O'Connell, YWCA.
Carmen Sanjani, Trust and Estates Attorney, and as of today, I'm with Weaver Curry.
Mark Hale, Carlisle Macy.
Good morning, Jen Del Rosario, Sonoma County Office of Education and Schools Rules, Sonoma County.
Steve Clegg, Bauer Associates, and President of the Board, Sonoma County Fire District.
Ryan Kelly, WSI, We Simplify Internet Marketing, your immediate past president. And I have with me a guest, Dane Mully from Accent Printing and Design.
Kevin Zinda, CFA Structural Engineers.
Morning, Aaron Smith with Adobe Associates, and I have a guest, Jeff Horowitz with Rio Lago.
Hi, Sadie Wilson with Greenbelt Alliance. Hi, Dee, over there.
Hi, everyone. Mariah Padilla with Greenbelt Alliance.
Good morning, Samantha Paul Planning and Consulting, President of the Marquess Area Chamber of Commerce, proud board member for BASC, and I have a guest with me today, Cassie Bresson, who's on my team as Director of Operations.
Good morning, Jonathan So, Sotheby's International.
All right, thankfully we have a good chunk of cards to make an interesting raffle today. We're gonna pull, I think, 5. Yeah, please. All right, Tommy. Ready? All right, it's going to be first come, first served, so go ahead and sprint on up if your name's called. We have beer from Coubert Brewery. We have Valletta wine, and we have Lando wine. All right. Cal from PCD. First winner. Jeffrey Horowitz, second winner. We've got Jim Pratt from Cornerstone. We have Julie DeVidia from the Assessor's Office. And we have Mark Catchman. Come on up. All right.
Yeah, Jim, I remember the old days. You'll be able to polish that off pretty well. So thank you all, and thank you to Ty for doing those great announcements and introducing everybody. So about today's program, so we're going to bring up, we have 3 different speakers. We're going to bring them up individually for a short presentation to give their kind of perspective of our topic. And then we'll bring our amazing board member up, Jake Fry, and he's going to moderate a conversation with those folks. So we're going to start, the first person really doesn't need any introduction in this room, Carissa Cruz, CEO of Sonoma County Wine Grape Growers. They have about 1,800 members, and we are so fortunate to have this kind of talent representing Sonoma County wines, because I swear internationally she's known for what she does for us. So come on up, Carissa.
Okay. On the little
intimidated because I think there's a person at every table that could actually tell you what's really happening, boots on the ground here. With I think more grape growers than I'm able to get at some of our meetings. So Cam Morrison here said the key is that everyone else from outside the industry has to invite someone from the industry. So that's going to be our new way to work. So I'm going to start by sort of grounding us in kind of the big picture of what we're seeing happening here from kind of an economic standpoint, vineyard acres coming out, and maybe what we can sort of expect going ahead. And then, because I've been told always that if you're in farming, you have to be a glass half full person, even in a challenging marketplace. I'm going to conclude with some things that we're doing at the Sonoma County Wine Grape Commission to really try to think bigger picture about how we try to respond to what's happening in the marketplace. So with that, and I think you're going to see a lot of overlaps with Andrew and Jeanette as well, and so we'll kind of tie everything together and have a conversation. So off we go. So just to sort of ground everyone, what we do, Sonoma County Wine Growers, we kind of work with 3 organizations now. Sonoma County Wine Growers representing the growers, so they pay an assessment into our organization, just so everyone understands the funding model. On one side. On the other side is our foundation. So you've heard a lot from me historically. Sole mission to support our vineyard workforce and their families. So we have a resiliency fund that has given out over $2 million to our vineyard workforce, floods, fires, etc. And we also have a leadership academy, the first of its kind for vineyard workforce in the state of California, if not beyond, that we're super proud of, and an employee recognition program. And then about 4 years ago, we started the middle thing called the Sonoma Winery Collaborative, which was a way for wineries to become members of our organization to really match and support the grower dollars that were really being invested in some of our partnerships and programming. So we kind of navigate all 3 of those organizations. Starting with an economic impact report that we did back in 2023. We worked with the former head of the Small Business Development Center out of Sacramento to help us really pull public record data on what ag land owners are actually doing to support sort of our local economy here in Sonoma County. And so it is a couple years old, and so this is just grounded in that, but it will give you a sense sort of directionally of how to think about the economic impact of grape growers. So just to start, ag zoned lands in Sonoma County account for about 26% of all property taxes paid. So you're looking at about 6% of our wine growers here are supporting a lot of our economy here locally. Equivalent about $77 million annually in taxes and 18% of the total county's budget. So I think when we started this conversation, and Tanya was correct, but what happens in wine and agriculture here isn't about wine and agriculture, it's about the DNA and fabric of Sonoma County and our community and the North Bay, and what do we want to do collectively to help sort of keep this place that we get to love and call home. Moving on, and I love this stat, so people are probably surprised, but about on an every annual basis, about 20 to 30% of our wine grapes that are grown in Sonoma County are sold outside of Sonoma County. So this brings in over $100 million in revenue to Sonoma County from other regions. Most of those go to Napa. In case you don't know if you've been driving around Napa, it's not the best place to grow Chardonnay or Pinot Noir. That's right here in Sonoma County. And arguably we grow the best Cabernet as well. So those grapes sometimes migrate over the hill to Napa wineries for their programs. But we do thank them for the marketing that they do for us in their tasting rooms and for the money that they send this direction. So thank you, Napa. It's a better way, right? Optimistic way to look at it. Overall, our growers, again, back in 2023 when this was done, spend and kind of contribute over $800 million, again, in just sort of business activity that they generate through their businesses. And then I like this, the ripple effect is what we call. So this is where it kind of hits home, whether you're a banker, a small business owner, in marketing services. This is where the impact goes broader, is that about $500 million annually spent on sort of the other stuff that these farmers use and do. And an additional, so these 7,900 jobs are not the jobs that are on our vineyards. There's about 6,300 vineyard employees full-time here in Sonoma County. These are additional 7,900 jobs that are created because of the economic impact and the other things that our farmers spend money on here. So, and that, again, the trickle down is about $415 million that then that group of employees brings in an additional $25 million in taxes from that. So it does sort of paint the story when we think about, again, what we want the future to look like for Sonoma County, that it's not just about the farmers sitting around the table and can they sell their grapes. It's about every other business and home that's touched in our community because of what's happening right now. So then, this is really interesting. So what is actually happening? You're probably driving around and seeing some vineyards are coming out. Has anyone driven around and seen a vineyard coming out? Yeah. Pretty depressing. Especially for the farmers that are sitting there either with grapes unsold or pulling out the vineyards. We partnered with the California Association of Wine Grape Growers, Allied Grape Growers, so state organizations and all the regional associations around the state about a year ago to do an actual, I want to say, boots on the ground. What are the acres that got pulled out, like physically pulled out, not permits pulled, because you're going to hear about that from our ag commissioner in a minute, but what physically could they see got pulled out between October of 24 and August of 25. For Sonoma County, it was about 2,700 acres, or about 4.4% of our vineyard acres got pulled out in that very, very short period of time. What's really interesting to me when you look at the data, Napa actually pulled out more. So they pulled out about 3,100 acres of grapes, equivalent to almost 9% of their vineyard acres. So I think what was happening for a long time for us is Napa Sonoma, because of our sort of premium brand equity and sort of globally known, we were a little insulated. So I think you would hear regions like Lodi and the Central Valley had started feeling this impact of sort of the shift in consumer demand, cost of labor, cost of everything going up, already back in 22, 23. And it slowly, I think, why Sonoma County made the news so often and Napa in the last sort of 12 to 18 months is because when it finally hit Sonoma and Napa, it became very real for the entire world that if a premium wine region isn't able to sort of navigate this, we all need to figure out what we're doing. So I will share that. And there is some other numbers. So it was about 30, I should go back, about 38,000 acres around the state came out. And there'll probably be double that number in another year. So for perspective, as we bring supply and demand into balance. And for anyone that's in farming here, you probably know it's really hard to ever be in balance in agriculture. So we have some dairy folks here, right? Some milk pricing goes up, so dairymen bring in more cows to the herds, and then the price drops, and then we have all the extra cows. It is incredibly hard when you're actually looking at long-term investments, whether it's in animals or vineyard plantings. So just in terms of what we look at, so most of our funding for the wine growers comes in through an assessment that growers pay on their tonnage that they sell and the pricing that they sell it at. So this is kind of the graph that we look at as we are now about to predict what the harvest is going to look like for next year. So just for perspective, so 2025 numbers just came out. It was a preliminary report done by USDA and CDFA. So we were estimating in our budgets about 180,000 tons were going to be harvested. So we were thinking we're going to be down about 20+%. We actually came, if this holds true as they do the final report, we came in about 13.5% down in tonnage, so a little better than we were expecting. Pricing held a little stronger than we were expecting. It was average tonnage price just over $2,700. But I think what we're seeing is in the grape growing world, right, there's a lot of long-term contracts, evergreen contracts. So as this year, I think especially, we're gonna see a lot of those contracts have come up, and we're gonna see the impact even more on probably that average tonnage price for next year, or 2026, I would say, harvest. So given all that, and again, optimism, so yay, we're all super happy. You all looked really happy when I started, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm warning you too, it's not a pretty picture up here now, everyone's very sad. So to shift the dynamic, and I love this, there's no better way to shift than you can't miss, I think it was even on the front page of Press Democrat today, an AI article. So the image on the right was an AI generated article about all the things I thought we were gonna start to do. So it's about partnerships, it's about our beautiful community, it's about driving and working, I know tourism, Claudia is here, Kelly's here, it's about working with our partners in tourism to drive more wine tourism here. So all of those things sort of working together, which I kind of love this image for that. And our grower board, and I'm very happy that we went in this direction. I would say when I started 14 years ago, anyway, I know, thanks Lisa, that was nice. She was like, yep, no, how have we been at this for so long? 14 years ago, we were really focused on sort of getting the name Sonoma County out to the world. It was like, hey, we're here, don't just think about, if you're gonna come to Northern California, yes, Napa's great, but also come to Sonoma County. And that has evolved so much. I mean, the days of, I want my logo somewhere are gone. It's now about, how do we sell wine? period. And it's no longer about how do we grow the category, but how do we own our share of the category. And so we've really shifted, I would say our go-to-market strategy to support that. So we did a board retreat, which farmers love board retreats, can you imagine? Come in from their farm, sit in a room all day with a whiteboard and brainstorm. It's probably as much fun as all the construction guys, Lisa? Yeah, that's why she's laughing there, right? So we know this, but we did it, and what we really shifted is that we fundamentally as grape growers, and I should say about 60% of our growers just grow grapes. They're not connected to their own wine brand. So you have a lot of farmers that are just farmers here in Sonoma County. They really fundamentally said, we are not going to be successful if we're not literally helping Roddy Strong sell wine, Jackson Family sell wine, Lando sell wine, Boleto sell wine. We have to help our wineries move wine. It's the only way we're going to move through inventory than to bring the wineries back to buying grapes. So we have completely shifted what we're thinking about doing and how we sort of manage that going forward. To that end, we came with 3 simple strategies. We want to win in the marketplace. We want to farm for the future. So we have a big farm initiative. We mentioned John Deere is here. They're one of our long-term partners to help us think through how do we maintain sort of viability in our farming going forward. And then ensure Sonoma County's relevancy as a wine region and really a destination. So a bunch of different objectives, but a lot of it really is being the region of choice. And we're now going to partners and saying, yeah, we'll take a logo, but let's private label wine. So we, my partners aren't here today, but with San Giacomo and Sarah's Ranch, we have 2 private label wines that are now the official wine of the Coachella Valley Firebirds hockey team. We launched the first ever wine club in Major League Sports with the San Francisco Giants. We're looking at doing, working with most of our big corporate partners and saying, can we launch a wine club for your employees? So we went through about a 3-year process as an organization where we figured out how to get permitted to buy and sell wine on behalf of our partners so we could leverage. We have such a small budget that we have to leverage the John Deere's of the world, the Landry's restaurants, the Giants restaurants to talk to their consumers about what we're doing here. And so that's really been our model moving forward. So again, I think there's definitely the marketplace is challenged, but I also want to provide a little hope that we're not just sitting back and saying, oh well, this sucks. And I hope people come back to the industry. But really that we're trying to be proactive about getting our wines into places where it's more accessible, it's more fun, different price points, so we can really bring the next generation into sort of drinking wine. And if you are a Gen Xer right now, we collectively have surpassed the baby boomers in terms of our value and importance in the wine industry, so go us. And then what you can do, and Ty mentioned it, buy local wine. And I think be a tourist in your own backyard. I mean, go explore. I mean, I think it's so important. So many of us bring family and friends out here, and it's, that's when we get to show off our region. So keep doing that. That really does provide value back to our partners and to your neighbors. And support local wine on menus. And if you go to one of your favorite restaurants and it's primarily imported wine or not Sonoma County wine, or even, yes, there's other great wine regions in California, but hey, we're in Sonoma County, we have the best damn wine in the world. So we should be asking for that, encouraging your restaurant partners, your favorite restaurant, your restaurant down the street to really focus on carrying Sonoma County wine. Reach out and get educated about the impacts. You're here at Alliance tracking all these trends, what's happening with policies and regulation. There's a general plan update coming. Ensure that you're being educated on what those impacts are going to be for agriculture and our wine community, and then share your voice when you see those impacts. So those are what you can do, because you have to be a part of the solution, right? So with that, I will turn it over, I think, back to Tani for our next speaker.
Take your seat. There you go. Thank you, Chris. It's great information. So our next speaker is Andrew Smith. He's our Ag Commissioner. And if you're not familiar with what he does, his department is in charge of overseeing ag policy and regulations here in Sonoma County. But God bless him, because he's really dictated by the state what he does. And he gets to deal with the county and the state at the same time. So come on up, Andrew.
Thank you, Tani, and thank you, Ty, and thank you, the Alliance, for inviting me here today. Thank you, Nick, for putting this on. And just want to talk a little bit about what we do. I am a Sonoma County native. I've been with the county for 20 years. now, and I've been the Ag Commissioner for the last 6, and I got appointed on March 10th, 2020, and the following week, for my first week in the position, I got a shelter-in-place order, and then we had fires in 2020, so as far as fire and brimstone testing my resolve in the position for the first 4 years is what happened. Graduate of the California Ag Leadership Program, Class 54, which we just finished, and I sit on the Santa Rosa Junior College Ag and Natural Resources Faculty Advisory Committee. Wanted to talk a little bit about our department. We have a vision of a thriving agricultural industry, healthy community, environment, and economy. And our mission is to promote and protect agriculture, and a number of supervisors over the years have asked, how do you be a regulator in agriculture and also be an advocate for agriculture? And I say plainly, if you don't have people to regulate, how can you do your job? And so it's important for us to recognize how important agriculture is. It's a critical infrastructure in the county of Sonoma, not only to our identity as an agrarian landscape, and this county was founded on agriculture and ranching and plant agriculture, and we gain compliance through an overarching enforcement philosophy of compliance through education. I had another slide in here that explained where the Ag Commissioners come from, and there was an act to promote and protect agriculture in the state legislature in 1881, and that it started the horticultural commissioners at the time, and their job was to, with all the people moving to California, bringing with them plants and seeds and animals, was to make sure that we protected the state through a quarantine system for invasive pests, weeds, and diseases that could harm agriculture and our natural resources, and also to build markets in agriculture throughout the state for fruit trees, vines, and livestock agriculture. And that predates the formal establishment of the California Department of Food and Agriculture, which came about in 1926. And then in 1929, the state said, hey, we can't use this county by county specific oversight and regulation of agriculture, so let's mandate them to do work for the State Department of Food and Agriculture, and we'll change their name to Agricultural Commissioners. And so that's why there's an agricultural commissioner in every county in the state of California, and that's very, very different and unique from all other states, which usually have a central State Department of Agriculture with some satellite offices throughout the state. And we're fortunate in California that we have an agricultural commissioner and sealer of weights and measures in every county in the state. For those of you that don't know, our department is charged with enforcing and administering the policies of the Vineyard Erosion and Sediment Control Ordinance, which came about in 2000 by the Board of Supervisors. And it's really to address vineyard and orchard development in the county and prevent erosion, basically prevent soils from moving into watersheds throughout the county. We have different levels of vineyard and orchard development that we permit in the county. And we also have grading and drainage responsibilities for reviewing grading and drainage project. Newer in VESCO is a low-impact replant registration, which helps folks who want to pluck and plant, as it were, especially in sensitive areas like the Santa Rosa Plain, where the opportunity for litigation presents itself, and to help growers be able to replant their vineyards without too much impact. And then we have an opportunity through a provision in the ordinance to extend the life of a vineyard or orchard development permit for an additional 5 years to try and provide growers with the flexibility they need to make decisions, especially as it relates to responding to market pressures like we're dealing with now. I wanted to take a little snapshot of, we have 1976 and the challenge in Paris, where Sonoma and Napa County wines really kind of got their big break, and you could see acreage increase with the maximum acreage that we have on record through the crop report in 2013 of 64,000 acres. It's gone down since then, and when we started this year, we had 58,302 acres, 301 acres. What we monitor, I think it's important to recognize that we don't keep track of what's coming out and not going back in. And so when you look at what the California Association of Wine Grape Growers did in partnership with their stakeholders, and the 2,711 acres that came out between August of 24 and October of 25, we combine that with what we know to be, what we know of, okay? So we had, in the same time period, we had 180 level 1 replants towards 3,905 acres. And then we had 37 level 2 replants that account for 1,127 acres. So a total of 5,000 acres that are subject to replant permits and that will come out in the next 5 to 9 years. So when you combine that with COG's estimate of 2,711 acres, we're getting closer to what I believe is a sustainable, if you will, or market-driven equilibrium in acreage, which is around 50,000 acres in the county. But we'll see, because we only know how many acres are subject to a permit to replant. We don't necessarily know exactly how many acres are coming out that are not going to go back in, or that growers are considering replanting at some point in time. And I do want to say that there's an opportunity that we all have, and if you're in agriculture, you feel it as an obligation, and that's to control the narrative of what agriculture, contemporary agriculture in Sonoma County looks, sounds, and smells like. Because there's a lot of special interest groups that would like to alter that narrative and make vineyard agriculture, or agriculture in general, whether it's dairy agriculture or crop production, look bad. And that's not fair to the growers that have spent multi-generations farming the land, and you can't be sustainable if you're not going to make it last for generations and build a legacy. And so I just want to say that we all have an obligation to learn more about agriculture and increase and improve adult ag literacy in our county. And we take it as an obligation in our role as the Ag Commissioner's Office and our staff. And we work very closely with our industry stakeholders to help understand the narrative and what does agriculture look, sound, and smell like in the county. And so with that, I will lead on to our next guest, and Tani, you have the mic back. Thank you. If I duck out at 8:45, it's because I have a board briefing with the district.
Ooh, the bar might be open. You might want to try that. So I am so excited to announce our next speaker. I have known this young lady since she was like 8 in 4-H and FFA, and it's so exciting when one of our local ag kids comes back and works in leadership programs here in Sonoma County. So with that, Jeanette McClure, she is a senior relations manager for American Ag Credit, dealing with lending in ag.
Thank you, Tani. I know it's very fun to grow up in Sonoma County and then leave and then come back and see all these friendly, familiar faces. It was so funny. I met Ty earlier, and she said, "Do you have a sister?" And I said, "Yep." And she said, "I went to school with her." So I feel like stuff like that happens all the time up here, which is so fun. So I am Jeanette McClure. I am a senior relationship manager with American Ag Credit. We are money for ag. Let's see if I can pull up. Oh, great. Okay. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about access to capital as it relates to the wine industry. And American Ag Credit, we are, I think, the largest wine and vineyard lender. Also, about 80% of our portfolio is comprised of wine and grapes. So we are heavily invested in this community and very committed to the industry. So I think Chris is going to talk about Andrew as well, but we are seeing obviously a shift in consumption across America. U.S. wine consumption has fallen about 15% since 2019, and it declined again in 2025. The pressure is on the lower priced wine, which I think bodes really well for Sonoma County as more of a premium wine producer. We are seeing though, just in our industry and at the bank, Napa is faring a little bit better than Sonoma County just because they're the ultra premium luxury side. And so we are feeling it a little bit more here in Sonoma County. In terms of inventory, and I think this is probably, if there's any wineries in the room, this is probably where we're feeling it the most. As wine sales slow down, inventory builds up, and capital is tied up in that inventory. We have had smaller harvests in 24 and 25. I don't think that the larger harvest in 25 is actually beneficial because we're still going into now 26 with some excess inventory. But it's still, it is helping to rebalance the supply, but I think that's the number one concern for most of our customers right now is that they have a lot of inventory and not completely sure how to get rid of it. And then I also want to touch on wine businesses. You know, they're still selling wine. It's not that obviously people are not selling wine, but it's frequently at a slower velocity and there's tighter margins. So again, the cash is really tied up in inventory right now. In terms of vineyard values, so American Eye Credit, we have an internal group of appraisers, and we have really good data not only on the land that we are lending on, but also the other transactions that are happening in the county. And so we're seeing that values are down in the prime areas about 20 to 35% from the peak, like in 22, 23. I will say that there have been significantly worse values that we're also seeing. So we were just talking to someone last week within 30 miles of where we're standing right now, and their property appraised for $125,000 just a couple years ago, and they're entertaining offers at $25,000 an acre. So who knows if they're actually going to sell for that, but that's where people are offering right now, and that's kind of what we're looking at, which is scary, and it's not the best property. They need to be replanted. There's significant capital that needs to be invested in that property, but we're looking at significant declines in properties that are not in the prime area, that are kind of more on the outskirts. Let me just see if there's anything else. If people have really good vineyards with really good contracts, we're not seeing a lot of those for sale. So the contract issue, I'm sure as many of you have heard that are in the industry, is a very big deal right now. A lot of wineries are canceling contracts. A lot of growers are having trouble finding a home for their grapes. So that's kind of the main concern, and that's really what we're looking at as a bank as well, is to see what kind of contracts do we have. Are our customers going to be able to sell their grapes, and to who, and for how much? In terms of our sales data that we have, we are showing over a year average on the market for our properties that are for sale. Most of them have a price cut, and a lot of that price cut is also related to the increase in farming costs. So obviously with inflation and everything else going on right now, farming costs are increasing. I was talking to Sean earlier about John Deere and the opportunities in technology. And so that is something that all of our growers are looking at, is different ways to mechanize, different ways to bring down farming costs as a way to kind of offset some of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing. In terms of access to capital as it relates to lending and the bank, for people who have existing loans on the books, there's really no change. If you're making your payments, the banks, American Eye Credit or any other bank, they just let you do your thing. Where we're seeing a problem for customers that are looking to refinance, or their loans come up for maturity, they're coming to the bank and they say, okay, we got this property, we bought it for $10 million a couple years ago, we need to refinance it. And we say, okay, great. And then we go get an appraisal, and the appraisal comes in short. And then in that situation, people are there, they need to come in with additional capital, or, that's kind of I'm trying to think of another way to say it, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So that is kind of the biggest problem for us right now. And I guess I should probably not use LTV is loan to value. And so that's what we as a bank look at in terms of the loan balance versus the appraised value of the property. And it's, you know, it's a challenge right now for us. I think we see definite opportunity. I don't want to be doom and gloom because I know that it sounds like that right now. But we do think things are stabilizing, and you know, we're not expecting, you know, huge declines to continue. But for right now, we're kind of at a very odd place as we try to navigate. And just from an appraisal standpoint as well, it's hard to put a value on the property when you don't really know what the good comps would be. Like if someone's selling in a distressed sale as your neighbor, is that really a true comp for your property? Probably not. So there's a lot of nuances, and so I would not want to be an appraiser right now. Got it, be on the lending side, and actually my sister is an appraiser, so I can say she did that, I didn't do that. So as we move on, so again, if anyone has worked in a bank recently or gone to a bank, there's a big focus on cash flow is king, and I think someone mentioned that somewhere in the introduction.
Chuck!
Yeah. But it's really true, and we see a lot of people coming and they say, we have this great collateral position, we have tons of equity in our property, and that's so true, but equity does not pay back the bank, cash flow pays back the bank. So we're really focusing on contracts, we're focusing on, you know, again, the velocity of the inventory, how quickly people are able to sell, the margins that they have, because those cash flow funds are actually what pays back the bank and not the money that's tied up in inventory and not able to be deployed for different things. So, and then I don't think I've actually talked about interest rates, so I could probably chat about that a little bit. I'm sure we've all heard, I think when I started my lending career, I think interest rates that we were working off LIBOR, but it was almost zero. And now, you know, rates are obviously resetting, and as, you know, the spread increases by, or the rate increases by 3 or 4%, that goes directly to the bottom line for all businesses. So it's just, interest rates are not helping anyone right now. We're hoping that they will be coming down, and they certainly seem to be stabilizing, but then you say that and then, I don't know, it sounds like we're in another war right now, so who knows? But we're hopeful that rates will either stabilize or come down, but I don't have a crystal ball, I have no idea. So then I think I'll kind of have a couple more slides, but wrapping up. Did I skip one? Okay, great. So in terms of refinance risk and capital selectivity, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit as well. We do have some buyers in the market, but they're pretty selective, and I think a lot of people are just kind of sitting on their capital. We are seeing a lot of creative financing, as I kind of mentioned, with if there's a shortfall in the loan to value, the equity on the property. People are looking at seller carrybacks, or, you know, guaranteed if someone's selling their property, they say, hey, we promise to buy those grapes for the next 10 years to make the bank feel comfortable that, you know, the next buyer will have 10-year contract for fruit. So we're seeing some interesting things like that, but we are seeing price gaps still in terms of obviously what people want to sell for and what people want to buy for. Looking at the local economic impacts, with the industry where it is, we are seeing replanting and major capital improvement projects deferred or being very selective. So instead of people replanting, you know, 100 acres all at one time, maybe we're doing a couple of blocks every couple of years to kind of match with the cash flow and timing on that. We also are seeing our service providers feel the slowdown, and so this isn't just the wine and vineyard industry, it is the barrel industries, it's the cork industries, it's the glass industries, it's tourism here, it's that it's not just insulated to the wine industry. And then the last thing that I just wanted to touch on, Nick and I were chatting about the general plan. I know the general plan is coming up. So I think that it's important, not only from a business standpoint, but from a lending standpoint and just a family planning of your business. It's important to know where local policy is going to be so that you can plan for the future of your business. We are seeing, if there's uncertainty in terms of what you can use your land for, it's very difficult for us to say, okay, well, we don't know, if you're going to have the same land use, availability or land use rules in a couple years. How do we know that we can, lend on that? And just from a personal standpoint, I grew up on the Point Reyes National Seashore on a dairy out there. And so we were operating on 20-year leases, and so you can figure out, planning on 20 years at a time, but when that compresses or when rules change, your business has changed. So I would just say when you're thinking about the general plan, please keep ag in your hearts and your minds, and support ag as you kind of think about the general plan. So I think that is it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette. And so now we're going to move on to our moderator, Nick Fry. So excited that he is part of our board here at the Business Alliance of Sonoma County. He's the Boleto brand manager, and in my world, I consider him kind of the E.F. Hutton of grape growing in Sonoma County. He's been in the industry for decades here in our county. Not that he's like you're old, but I'm just saying, and I think he's responsible for us having person as well, right? Yes. So thank you, Nick, and we're going to turn it over to you and the microphone.
Okay. Well, thank all of you for coming. It's nice to see a big crowd because we've got a big problem and people in the county need to be aware of it. So I appreciate you being here, and thanks to our speakers. I think you've set this up well. I'm going to have very few questions because I think it's important to get questions from the audience. So think about what you want to ask, and I'm going to ask a couple here to start us out, and then we'll go from there. The first question is, okay, I have a vineyard. I pull it out. Now what? What is the alternative? Is there any crop that you can think of that we could grow on 60,000 acres that would give a return that's better than grapes and wine? So,
I'll offer to start.
Go ahead.
So we have been saying wine grapes are sort of our crop of last resort, and not because we can't grow anything and everything here in Sonoma County. We're so blessed with all of our soils and climates, is that financially, when you look at our per grape tonnage price per acre and what our farmers are paying, either in loans and what their land value is, it's really hard to replicate that. You go to a wine region like Lodi, where maybe you're getting $400 to $600 per ton versus $2,700 to $2,900 plus per ton. You have some competitive crops, almonds, pistachios, others that may be able to replace vineyards there, and from a farming perspective, net sort of the same financially. And so that's where we're kind of stuck, I would say, is what's the alternative? And I think, we thought for a while as a community, maybe cannabis was going to be this, shiny new crop or something, and clearly that didn't happen as we've seen, and so there really hasn't been. I mean, we've had some people are growing agave here that you farm that every 7 years, so that's once every 7 years you get money back on that, so that's tough. So there's it's a very challenging,
Yeah, I think a lot of people have come in and talked about things like, can we grow avocados in the county if you're in a microclimate where you're not going to get a substantial amount of frost? That's something that people are talking about. And then also there's been a lot of conversion to super high density olives for olive oil production, but there's been consolidation in that market as well. So that's going to bode well for someone who's in the Central Valley that's getting lower values per ton of grapes to shift to something like super high density olives. The caveat is that you can still use all of the same equipment for super high density olives for olive oil production. that you're using for your wine grape production. There's a lot of opportunity for mechanization in that industry to save money, but there isn't a lot of other commodities that you could move from, like Carissa says, that are going to have that high return per acre or per unit of harvested biomass.
If anyone knows Duff Bevel, who's a grower here, he gives a very simple answer. Our next crop is houses. So, so our construction crews are happy, but our landscape looks very, very different. So.
I do want to make a plug again for the general plan, because the general plan's slated to be completed in 2029. It's about a 3-year process. It's underway in the county, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for agricultural practitioners and those that are invested in agriculture to weigh in when we come to the ag resource element of the general plan, and what policies, goals and objectives does the county need to put in place to essentially establish the constitution of land use for the next 20 years in the county. Also, next Tuesday there is a board workshop, a public workshop with the Board of Supervisors at 1 p.m. on issues facing agriculture. Of course, one of those issues is fallowing, and how do we define fallowing for our wine grape industry and other agricultural land uses, such that there's flexibility for a grower to make decisions over time, and in the meantime let land rest, build soil, contribute to groundwater recharge. But what kind of cultivation constraints need to be practiced so that we don't reestablish hydrologic features in the landscape or habitat that could compromise the landowner's ability to develop that for vineyard or orchards moving forward, especially when you get out of 3 to 5 years down the road. So just want to bring that up. If you want to pay attention to the Board of Supervisors workshop next Tuesday at 1, there'll be opportunity for both online and in-person public comment at that workshop, so I invite you all to stay tuned.
No, I wish that I had a good crop for someone to plant if they already ripped out their vines, but I don't. I would not recommend that.
I think that's the dilemma. There really isn't much of an alternative. So if land does not get planted back to the vineyard at some point, those land values and the property taxes are going to be very different. So that's where it starts affecting government. It starts affecting a lot of businesses. So it's a real challenge. Now, I just have one for fun. What is the new steady state acreage going to be, and how long is it going to take us to get there? And will there ever be a rebound to 60,000 acres of grapes again in the county?
I'll start it off. I think that it just really depends on when demand stabilizes. I don't think that we've reached a point where demand has completely leveled out right now. So I think it's all about just drinking more, and once we get there, you know, hopefully. There's nothing wrong with breakfast wine. They call it mimosas to be socially acceptable. But that's an answer.
I kind of mentioned it in my slides, but looking at what COG estimated as already coming out and what we have permitted for replants, I think it's somewhere around 50,000 acres, although I'm not a mathematician or an economist. I'm just looking at what the trends are that we're seeing now, and we're watching the number of new plantings of vineyard and orchard in the county just take a nosedive. And there is still an increase or an upward trend in the number of replants, but I think it's really just to respond to the market and know that you have a 3 to 5 year period where you're not going to be pulling a harvest off those crops, so that you're kind of trying to gauge, do we replant now and kind of hope it comes back in the next 3 to 5 years, or do we leave it fallow, and how long do we leave it fallow before we decide what we're going to do?
So I'll be more optimistic. And so I look at the replant process, so you can get a permit for 5 years, or you can renew it once for 4 years and 4 days and a half or something. So I think it's going to take us a full 10 years before we really see the implications of like what's actually getting put back in the ground. I do think, and I'll use my husband says, well, you know, the farmers like to follow the farmers and they follow the trends, but it's hard to do that when you're growing grapes and planting just because of the time lapse. But I think we'll probably end up between 54,000 vineyard acres. I think some of those vineyards that have been pulled will get replanted. And then as the market, which we're now hearing will hopefully come in balance for California in 2028 is the latest when you look at bulk inventory and what vineyard acres are being pulled out, then you'll have a bunch of farmers that go, oh look, the market's in balance, so let's plant. So you'll have some new farmers coming back in, or these vineyards getting sold, so that'll account for another 500 to 1,000 acres of, I would say, newbies. So I'm netting out around 53 or so thousand acres, which is a guess.
One of the things that is important to know, you have, was it 1,400 growers?
Over, yeah.
And if you think of 1,400 growers and you grow average, and it's, let's for round numbers, you only have 60,000 or fewer grape acres. A lot of those growers are small. 5, 10, 20 acres. Those things are expensive to farm. You have to haul in equipment. Vineyard managers aren't real efficient hauling their stuff around and their employees, and they're going to be in trouble. The same is the trouble with the small wineries. If they can't sell 100% direct to consumer, it's hard to get distribution. RNDC, the second largest distributor in the country, they and Southern Wine and Spirits controlled about 60-some% of the wine sales. RNDC quit in California, and their divisions in other states are either sold or for sale. Now, what happens when a very large number of wines are now available for distribution, and so other distributors pick those up? And you think a small winery from Sonoma County that needs distribution is going to get the attention of a distributor today? They are cherry picking the RNDC portfolio, and it's really making it tough. So,
hey Nick, I can say, so just for context, about 70% of our wineries in Sonoma County actually produce less than 6,000 cases of wine. So you're considered a small winery around 10,000 cases. So they're really, really, really small. And I was just thinking the irony, the very first presentation I ever gave to Alliance, I think 12 years ago, I was trying to explain how there was no way we would ever have 100,000 acres of grapes here. We were fighting the other trend where people thought we were overdeveloping and were worried about how fast we were going to expand, and now we're here talking about how fast we're taking vineyards out. So, time.
Yeah, when I came here in '99, Adina Marylander in Berkeley predicted, they said you could plant 175,000 acres of grapes in the county. There's one thing you have to remember. It isn't what you can plant, it's what you can sell. The last general plan, they had 56,000 acres of grapes at the time, and they predicted by 2020 there would be 75,000 acres. It's very dangerous to see a couple of data points and then project 10 or 15 years in the future.
Which is just what you made us do. Okay, just for the record, are you catching that, right?
That's all right. You didn't have straight line, you just gave us a number. So that's enough for here. By the way, too, I produce a little olive oil. It's the most expensive olive oil you could find in the country. So don't look to olives. And then avocados, grapes don't use a lot of water. Avocados use a lot of water. So, we have things that are going to put limits to our opportunities. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the audience and let them ask the question.
All right, Scott.
thank you to the presenters. I think you each set the stage for what's going on in the industry, so beautiful job. And Nick, I had some of your olive oil on Sunday night, so thank you very much. It was great. Question is, as much as I hate to ask, is subsidies. So the federal government's great at subsidizing agriculture across the United States. Don't really like that policy. But when the dollars would come here, I might be interested. So is anybody exploring subsidies at some point in time? Maybe they just pay the bulk market to flush.
I'm from the Midwest. You got to understand that corn, soybeans, cotton, sugar, those crops seem to have their hand on the subsidy till. They just had $16 billion going to ag. $1 billion went to specialty crops. $15 billion went to commodity crops. So I don't think subsidies are the answer, but if they ever come about, I'm sure we could take them. Also, Europe gives subsidies, so that's how they help survive in their business.
So we are looking at a bit, I would call it the go-around on the subsidies. So we're actually hosting USDA, the Director of Specialty Crops and the Director of Technology and Data 2 weeks from now in county to show them what we're doing. So there are dollars available for innovation, technology. So if we can demonstrate that our farmers are, which we're doing a lot of pilots, are trying to pilot, be sort of forward thinking, we might be able to unlock some funding, but it's not to pull out the vineyards. So it's not a one-to-one, and Nick, absolutely right. In Europe, the government is paying, especially in France, to pull out vineyards. They're paying the farmers to remove the vineyards, to remove supply, to sort of reset their, the French wine market. So it's a little different, but it's why we've been really inviting partners like a John Deere, like a Ford, or Wilbur Ellis to come help our growers here, because we have to recruit them, because most of those dollars do go to the Midwest and sort of big ag.
Question. So this isn't going to be a fun question, because it's a question about NA wines, non-alcoholic wines. May not be as fun, but they do seem to be in trend. What's the possibility for Sonoma County growers to grow into that market? Because it seems like hop water, NA beer, and NA wine are definitely a thing for the future.
I can start. I mean, certainly the good news about NA wines, so non-alcoholic wines, is that they actually start with wine grapes. So we appreciate that they're still supporting our wine grape growers. Removing the alcohol is a bit of a vicious process, for lack of a better word. I mean, you're stripping the alcohol out and then adding flavor back in and stabilizing it. And so I think there are opportunities. I feel like we haven't quite, they're still working on the process to create really good tasting non-alcoholic wines or beverages in general. And what's ironic to me is you see trends, especially the younger drinkers are like, I want purity, I want sustainability, I want whatever, and then they drink something in a can that has 35 ingredients in it. So I do think it's on us, and I might do the same thing with sommeliers. We bring them in and then they're like, where's my orange Gatorade at 8 a.m.? And you're like, dude, you talked all about purity last night and how authenticity mattered to you. But anyway, I could talk for hours over wine about that. But I do think there are opportunities, but there's also on us, and I'll take ownership of this, more we can be doing. And like I said, we've been working with tourism, like how do we get the message about our sustainability commitment, about wine being really a food product, about the health benefits, about all of those things that we can own that some other competitive beverage categories can't. So it's a bit tricky, some of the language you can use and how you can promote and what claims you can make, but we're trying to get more ahead of it. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, choice is king, and if consumers, to the point of you got to make what you can sell. So I think there is a road forward for that, but more work to be done.
I think just to add on to that, we are seeing that obviously as one of the bright spots as in terms of growth, but in terms of overall market share, NA wines are just so small that it's not really going to move the needle. We are seeing some people look to add that as part of the portfolio. So if you have, you're going wine tasting and you have your pregnant friend with you, or, just from a lifestyle standpoint, they don't drink. So we're seeing that, but just in terms of moving the needle, probably not, but it is interesting.
I think low alcohol wines are more, but even depending on how they make those low alcohol, the key is what makes our grapes different and our wines different than somewhere in the Central Valley. Flavor, distinctiveness. By the time you get to zero alcohol, can you tell if that wine is from Sonoma County versus Fresno? And the key to us is differentiation based on quality. And we have to have consumers that appreciate that. And whether we can do that with a low alcohol wine, I don't know. We'll find out. I doubt we can do it with a no alcohol wine. So, other questions?
I have one. Good morning, and thank you for bringing this important conversation to us. I'm kind of curious, Carissa, you talked about the revenue that this brings, agriculture brings to the county. So then you also talked about going fallow. So maybe this is Diva and her team as much as anybody, but what happens to that poor grower? I have no revenue coming in and I still have to pay the same property tax, the same expenses. So this is, it's a big deal for the county from revenue, but also to each of the producers.
Yeah, so we do have several growers, a lot of growers that are going through a reassessment of property values. Right now, unfortunately, I think that office over there has got a lot of work, probably piling up. So I think in terms of the actual speed to providing that relief back to the farmers, it's going to take time. We're hearing 2 to 3 years probably before we see. Is that a fair assessment? Yeah. Let's bring the expert in, and then I don't have to answer that one.
I think one of the things with reassessments that a lot of people don't think about is that vineyards aren't generally valued at market value. So because of Prop 13, a lot of the vineyards that have been, especially at the same ownership for a long time, they are receiving a low property tax rate in terms of what the current market value is, which we are seeing change right now. And so we're looking at that internally, keeping an eye on the current market for those recently sold properties that might be eligible for a property tax reduction. One of the things that we have been working with the different agencies on is just educating when somebody is pulling out vineyards, when that is going to come out of the property tax roll, and it's going to be the January 1st after they are pulled out, so it's the following tax year. And then what it means pulling out vineyards versus just leaving them fallow, because those property taxes are all established by state law. So it's not that we're going to be adjusting them based on the income. So, and I think it's also important to understand it's not just property taxes, it's also the insurance going up, it's the supplies going up. It's all of these expenses that are all just kind of hitting at the same time. So.
And then I would add, we probably, at least in 2025, if you estimate based on what the crop size looked like, we probably left about $100 million in value of grapes on the vine. So that's the trickle-down impact. So there's a property reassessment, which takes time, and then there's the reality of what's still out there that's not actually being paid for. And at that point, there is farming costs that go into getting it there, and with a hope that maybe there'll be a customer that comes in, because if you haven't farmed it right the whole year, you're definitely not going to sell those grapes if someone comes into the market. So.
Good morning. During these times, will family wineries sell and will lose local family growers? Will the next generations stay in ag? And is there research on equipment versatility? That's a sort of an add-on, but since I got the floor. And what about pot in the farm portfolio, if not just complete transition?
I might need a refresh on all 4 of those, but I think the first one was if small family wineries will sell. I think the answer to that is perhaps. I think there's a lot of consolidation in the wine industry, just like there are across all industries right now. I think there's not a lot of movement in terms of actually, if something is for sale, there's not a lot of buyers right now. So even if someone wants to sell, they might not be able to sell, so it's kind of an interesting time. I think I missed the middle question, and there's something about equipment.
The next generation of our farm families.
Such a good question. I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to answer this question as a 5th generation dairy farmer who is not on a dairy farm. So my dad sold the cows a couple years ago. He had 3 girls, and none of us wanted to take over the operation because, I mean, number one, it is really freaking hard work. And number 2, you know, I'm just gonna be honest, like I don't feel like there was a ton of support for the local farmers. And so we had a lot of opposition to our dairy, and I think we were really good stewards of the land, organic farm, but I think a lot of people don't understand where their food comes from or who their farmers are, and I think we as an ag community probably did a really bad job of bringing people in and sharing our story, because I think the local farmers here in Sonoma County are the best farmers in the world, but I think it's really yeah, so I think in terms of getting the next generation involved in the family operation, number 1 is financial stability, because it's really hard to take over an operation that is just not financially stable. And then number 2 is having the support of the community and saying, hey, we want you in our backyard, we want you as a neighbor. We're super proud to have, you know, these generational family farms here. So I think that's super important.
I'll answer the family. So what's really great that people probably don't know is that we've actually, as other wine regions have moved corporate, we've actually become more family owned. So even most recently with the sale of Vintage Wine Estates of their assets, it was mainly a family that bought those out of bankruptcy. And so at last estimate, we estimate our vineyards, 97% of our vineyards are still family owned. Sonoma County, local families, yes. Families live, yes, Jackson family, but they're a family and they live here. Gallo family, they live here. Foley family lives here. So I mean, we do have some very large families in our backyard. And I would just say what I've observed, which gives me hope, is that, and there's a lot of them sitting around this room today, is our farmers are gonna fight like hell to stay farming. And so I know it's gonna be a rough couple of years, and I think there's a lot of hard decisions being made, but you might see some consolidation, but I know as I look around this room, these folks are not gonna go down lightly, so it's up to us to keep propping them up and helping them fight that fight. And then in terms of cannabis and pot, I would just say, I think that we just learned there's no market for it beyond what's already being done. So if the market would change, maybe, but we're still also fighting with just sort of the setbacks between vineyards and cannabis, and in terms of, you know, the oils and the drift and what that does for impact. So it's not like you would go plant cannabis down the vine rows to save that and do a dual crop, would be my opinion on that.
So there's been some mention of wine tourism, and to me it's kind of a mix, it's a double hit, because the acreage promotes the wine tourism, but the wine tourism relies on the acreage to be there. But, you know, can you comment a little more, what's the size of the impact of wine tourism relative to just the ag, question 1. And question 2, what do you think about promoting, instead of, hey, come for a wine trip and have great food while you're here, what do you think of redirecting that towards, this is a great foodie destination that also has great wine? So kind of impact and what do you think of the direction?
We also have experts in the room. I'm looking at Claudia back there from Sonoma County Tourism. I would say, right, their new current campaign is, this is wine country, but it talks about a lot of those things you're saying, the amazing food and chefs and the outdoor activities and the Russian River and the vineyards, and it's a very encompassing reason why to come to Sonoma County as a destination. But Claudia, do you know how the mic? Did I buy you time? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Just in terms of the impact of wine tourism in Sonoma County, so we know the overall visitor spend in Sonoma County as it relates to tours is about $2.3 billion. Of that,
We are seeing a decrease in the number of travelers who come specifically for wine tourism. It was at one point about 27%, now 37%, now it's down to about 29%. So diversifying our message is certainly an important one to do. We are currently going through a whole initiative about finding our truly uncontested competitive space as it relates to tourism and wine tourism specifically. So yes, our current campaign is This is Wine Country. We do talk about wine. What we talk about, as Carissa mentioned, we are an incredibly diverse and exceptional destination as it relates to all the other things people can do here. So we'll see that depicted in our ad campaign. Know that we are working with Carissa and we're working with the vintners to really try and find that uncontested competitive space as it relates to wine tourism. So happy to answer any more questions if that answered for you. Thanks.
And I would also just offer our wineries, I mean, some of this shakeout, I would just say some of our business aren't going to make it through what we're going through. But there are some wineries and growers that are finding a lot of success and actually growing in this kind of unpredictable market. So I think you're seeing our wineries starting to get more creative, do more unusual things, make wine tastings cheaper, more accessible, free, different days, more neighbor stuff. So I think this really, and I'll just say from a wine perspective, we saw growth for so many years. It allowed us not to have to be as innovative in the product we were offering because it was just about quality, and obviously here's so much diversity. But now we're really, I think, seeing a lot of innovation and creativity that's coming out, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that helps sort of create better experiences and drive some of that wine tourism specifically.
So it's not really fair to wait until Andrew Smith leaves the panel. But I think it's important to ask the remaining panelists. We've talked about the cost of labor, we talked about the cost of supplies, we talked about the limited demand. What we've not talked about is the cost of government. And we have a situation, and I really appreciate your comments about the lack of support. We've got a general plan coming up here, but the cost of an application for a winery use permit can be up to 4 years. In David Ramey's case, it cost $1 million. He never ended up building it. Vesco permits on level 2 are up to 3 months. You've got a situation where you've got vineyards that potentially become petri dishes for surrounding vineyards. You're not able to move them through. Even to get a modification on a use permit is time and money. What is the role of government? And while we don't have Andrew Smith to answer that question, we do have at least one candidate for the 4th District Supervisor.
Come on up, Tom.
And I think it's critical, and I don't want to put him on, no, I do like putting him on the spot. The general plan, Andrew did touch upon it. They are doing a ad hoc workshop on Tuesday. On the following Tuesday, they're doing a general plan update. But I really appreciate the comments that you made. There is a cost of government, and we need a government. We need the community to support the wine community, but we need the government to support the wine community.
I just wanted to add one comment. I talked to Andrew and Linda Hopkins. We need to talk to more. But in order to pull out a vineyard today, if you hope to replant it, you have to get a permit to replant it before you can pull it out, which costs money. And right now, cash is king. And I'm going to take this out of production. I'll have no income for 5-10 years. But I have to pay several $1,000s up front just to get the vineyard out, if I ever hope to replant it. So that's a real problem that the government is working against us. Now, if they do that, they will have fewer permits going into the Ag Commissioner's office, so they might not have to have all their staff that they have on Vesco. But those are the kinds of things we need to think about, how we work together to solve a problem that's really an important one.
Thank you. Quick question. I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but we've talked a lot about plucking and replanting. Give us an idea what the cost to replant an acre of vineyard is.
I mean, right now it's $40,000 to $50,000 per acre to replant.
Yes. So these businesses decisions these vineyard owners are having to make are big ones, significant ones, and it takes what, 5 years before vines really are.
Yeah, it's 5 years before you're really pulling grapes off, probably 7 years where they're at a quality where you're selling them at a what you would think is the right price, the premium price that you would expect. Yeah, and that's, you already own the land, right? So you've already paid for the land and you're just gonna start, it's 40 to 50,000.
One other thing on the general plan, the land use element is important as well as the ag element, because those things are pretty closely tied. So if you people are looking at the general plan, you need to look at both of those elements.
Exactly, because we sure don't want our lands to go forever wild, because we experienced that in 2017 with the fires. So thank you all for being here. I'm positive because of these great people we have in our industry that is going to help us work through these challenges. A big thank you to our audience support as well. We had Diva, we had Claudia helping here with conversation and questions, so thank you so much. Appreciate you all being here. If you enjoyed this session, enjoy the things that we do, keep in mind we're a membership organization, so if you'd like to discuss membership, many of our board members are here and can help you with that conversation.
Can I ask one last takeaway? I would just ask all of you, I mean, a lot of us have friends and family that live in other parts of the country. Encourage them to go to their local grocery store, restaurant, buy Sonoma County wine if it's something we care about. I mean, if you are a company that gives out gifts to anyone, consider buying wine and supporting our wineries by giving out wine as a gift. There are lots of ways you can support the wine industry that's about making your voice heard, but also about literally supporting the product. So that's my final thank you. Please help us. Help you help us.
So we continue with some great programs on May 7th. We're going to be having John Stout with the airport here, Sonoma County Airport, talking about their latest developments out there. Very exciting that we now have Southwest, I think, flying over there. So thank you all for being here. Once again, if you want to talk about anything to do with the Alliance, we're all here to help. So thank you, have a great day, and find an April Fool's joke.